Hey everybody, it's Susanna from Papercraft Planet, and I wanted to walk you through assembling a wood-mounted stamp set. Some wood-mounted stamp sets will come with a sticker sheet, they'll come with instructions, and they'll come with a die-cut sheet of rubber with your images attached to it. And they'll also come with a coordinating amount of wooden blocks. Some manufacturers will ship it similarly, but you'll have to use rubber scissors, and that's not a regular off-the-shelf scissor. That's a scissor made for cutting rubber to actually cut out the stamps. But in this particular case, we can skip that step because Stampin' Up! Die cuts their stamps. So I'm going to pull them all apart. Just a note, it's always smart to pull all of your stamps out before you start adhering things down and laying them with their coordinating block so that you'll know you're matching things up correctly. A lot of times, believe me, a lot of times, you'll lay them out and you'll discover you used a smaller block and you'll have to peel them all off, and it's hard. The adhesive is really sticky. These are pre-adhesive on the back, and you'll notice in this particular case, I got 4 stamps and only 3 blocks. When this happens, it's usually suggested by the manufacturer that you're going to double mount this extra stamp somewhere on a block you already have. So in this case, I'm looking over all my options, and it really looks like it's going to be best on the side. Now, this particular wooden block has kind of a curve for your fingers on the side. I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of that space so that I can label it, and you'll see that step coming up in just a moment. I'm going to peel off the adhesive backing, and I'm just going to stick down my stamp and give it a little bit of pressure to make sure it holds. Flip it over, give it a good press, and then we're ready to add our sticker. And I'll just peel that off. I'm going to try an eyeball to line them up, but when I go to stamp with this stamp, if it's important that it be placed in a precise way, I'm going to use a Stamp-A-Majig because I'm going to be off by just a hair. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and in this indentation, I'm going to mount this little extra stamp that came with my set. I don't believe that that slight indentation will make a difference in how the image stamps out. It's a very thick cushion that comes on these stamps, and it's a very shallow groove, and this allows me to label my stamp on both sides and have the best of both worlds. The last thing we're going to do is cut off the barcode and stamp name off the sticker sheet that came with our stamp set and use it to label our box. Back in the day, I swear this used to peel off, but I guess it doesn't anymore. So I'm just going to cut it off with my little paper trimmer. Scrape the paper backing off and stick it on the side of the box. This is really helpful for wooden stamp sets because in order to store them, you're going to have to stack them somewhere, in a drawer, on a shelf, somewhere. And it's enormously helpful to be able to go back and see the name and know what you have. When I was a beginner stamper, people used to tell me, I've bought stamp sets that I already owned. And I thought that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. And now that I've been stamping for 5 years, I've done that before. So anyway, label your boxes. All right. Now, I want to share with you a little trick. I'm going to put Versamark all over this stamp, and I'm going to put a really good, fat, juicy coat of it. I'm going to really press hard. I'm going to press a lot. I'm going to make sure that the coating of Versamark is really, really thick. And then I'm going to go ahead and cover my stamp in the ink that I actually wanted to use. And I'm going to do this to transform any ink pad you have into an ink pad that you can emboss. So I've gone ahead and stamped my image, and then I'm just going to pour out my embossing powder and heat emboss it. If you've never thought of storing your embossing powder in these little Gladware containers, you should do it. It's really so much easier and so much cheaper than buying powder pals and other tools. And you can just store it with the plastic spoon right inside. So that's my organizational tip for you for the day. Now I'm going to break out my heat gun and I'm going to heat this up. And I am going to get about halfway through and I'm going to realize I never conditioned this stamp. I was so excited to break it out and play with it because it's so pretty and there's so many different ways you can color an image that's this intricate that I didn't take the time to condition it. And I didn't realize how badly it would need it until I embossed it. And you can tell just from this video, especially looking at the peacock's body, how many gaps where the ink just didn't stick. And, you know, if you look at the feathers closest to his body, they're kind of faded looking. That is because the detail just didn't transfer. The ink couldn't adhere to the stamp. And that is because when stamps are processed, they get a residue on them that is that the ink won't stick to. The best way to get rid of that residue is to first clean your stamps when you get them, which is a step I forget about sometimes because they're not dirty yet. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is break out a emery board. Make sure it's something old. I'm using a basic gray paper file that I have had for probably 3 years. I don't want to ruin the stamp. I don't want to really deteriorate it. I'm just looking for something that's a little bit abrasive to take off that top layer of residue. I've also heard recommended many times to use an eraser, and I'm doing that here. I've never found that to be quite as good as using an emery board, so I do both. Better safe than sorry. And then I'm just going to clean it again to make sure that any of the eraser gunk or file residue is off of it. And now I'm going to do the exact same process I did before. I'm going to really put a big fat juicy coat of Versamark all over my stamped image. And then I'm going to go ahead and cover it with the ink that I wanted to use. And I'm going to give it a good press. I want it to be really well inked up. I'm smushing it around, I'm rubbing it around to make sure that I get a lot of ink on the stamp. And then I'm giving it a good firm press. Okay, so now what's left is to emboss the image, and then we'll be able to really see a good before and after of how conditioning your stamps makes a big difference in your final product. Okay, I think you could tell at a glance, but I'll show you close up how much of a difference it makes. Here's the after, here's the before. Really focus on the peacock's body and look how much more coverage and how much more smooth the image is.